So once I came up with a concept sketch for what I thought the frame would look like, and here's the orthographic from it. Now I know that's a left side view, but the next phase was to, and I'll show you what my frame's going to look like, break it down into manageable pieces. Now remember, you can't manufacture this in one piece, so I'll split that into two pieces, and there'll be those tubes there. This piece here will be broken down into two pieces, and there's that piece. So when I'm done, there's 6 different components that I'm going to need to design to get the frame. So I'll just start with a new IPT file, and I'll start off with one of the simpler pieces just to get us started. Now, as you're doing this, since I'm really starting from scratch on my design, I'm going to use, what I think are reasonable numbers, and those very likely that those numbers are going to change along the way. That's part of the designing process. Anytime you're going to bend the tubing, make sure you bend it before you sweep it. And we're going to have to sweep it because it has a bend in there. I'm using a 3-inch radius, which is a pretty tight radius, but this design here has a very small tubing. It's 3/4 inch tubing, so you're not going to be able to use 3-inch radius. If you're using 1-inch tubing, about the tightest you can bend it is about 3-inch radius. So you're going to have to leave enough material. For example, on a 3-inch radius, I have to have a little more than 3 inches or I won't be able to bend it. So there's my pathway. I will need to create a plane on here. To create a new plane, go to the bottom where it says normal to a curve at a point. So normal is perpendicular. So if I go perpendicular to here, and the point would be the end point, that's going to be the plane I'm going to sketch my cross section. Now in this case, I'm going to use 3/4 inch diameter OD tube and 0.62 ID tube. Finish the sketch. There's my path. There's my cross section. Can't extrude it because it's got a bend in it, so I'll use the sweep tool. You're gonna, first of all, there's 2 things you have to choose. You need to choose the profile, which is the cross section. So see where that's highlighted. So you want to choose that, and then the path, which is going to be, turn that a little bit right there, and it'll sweep it. And you'll get this message, but it's okay, just say yes. I can turn off that plane right there. Now this piece of tubing is going to fit together with another piece, and you're not just going to butt a piece of tubing against another because you just have a big gap. So you're going to notch these out, and that's relatively easy to do. I will need some work planes. Just turn these on because the end of this tube here needs to be notched. So let's make a sketch on that plane, and I want to get right there on the end, and it's 3/4 tubing, so I'm going to do 750, finish the sketch. So you can see what I have there is that sketch on the mid plane. I will do an extrude. It's going to be a cut, and it's going to go both directions, and you can just put a number in there to make sure you cut through the tubing, and say OK. And there's my notched piece of tubing. And I'll just leave those planes off for now because I'm going to need to assemble this. Now when you save these, make sure you save everything as part number. I'll give you some part numbers to work with. Make sure you have a folder to put these in. So maybe on your desktop, create a folder. that's going to be so I'll do save as, go to your desktop, find that folder, and now save it as a part number. Since this is a frame part, we're going to use this nomenclature FRM for frame, 285 for the class, a dash, and then a part number. So this one I'm going to use the number 215, and I'm going to put a letter designation. You don't necessarily need to do that. Frame 285, part number 215. That's how you're going to save it. Don't save it as the part name. You'll put the part name into the title block later. Save it as a part number. So there's that piece. Start another piece. And again, I'm going off of my sketch that I showed you. And you always want to make sure you have a good reference point for these models, because we're going to have to use a lot of work planes for assembling it. So notice how I have this intersection here is set on that origin point, so I know that I'll have, if I turn on my work planes, I'll know exactly where I am. Alright, so your numbers are going to be different, your design is going to be different. This is merely an example. And I think I'm going to use 120, but I don't know. This is going to have to work out. Now, I did not put I just realized I didn't put my bend in there. Right, we're not going to butt pieces of tubing together like that. You got to put bends on the corners, so it's a 3-inch radius. Remember, you can't use anything smaller than a 3-inch radius. Okay, so there's the path. I'll need a plane, like I did before. Normal to a curve at a point. There's my curve. There's my point. Start a sketch right there. Same size. 3/4 OD. Do not make these solid. They are hollow pieces of tubing. Need to show them as such. Oops, can't extrude that. Sweep it. So I gotta choose the profile. And then choose, see when that's blue underneath, you know that's active. And choose the path. Say OK. So there's that piece of tubing. Now this one is, let me turn off that work plane. This one is going to mate to a piece of tubing going this way, so I have to notch that. So I'm going to need a work plane. Oops, when in doubt, just turn them all on. Let's see, do I need that one? Okay, so that's I want to notch the top of that, and I know that this is 11 inches. Let me offset a work plane from there. Oops. And that's going to be 11 inches up. And I'll offset a work plane here. I don't know, I'm trying to get close. Oops, went too far. Let's try minus 7.5. There's no right number here. I'm just trying to get close to my tube so I can see what's going on. I got a little bit too close. That works. Okay, and now I'm going to turn. You can get so many planes on here that it gets crazy. I'm just going to turn those the visibility up. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is make a sketch on that plane so that I can notch this out. You'll see how it, when I get it done, you'll see how that works. So at that intersection, at the intersection of those planes, I'm going to do a 0.75 diameter. It can be just a single circle. You don't have to worry about it being hollow. And then I'll do an extrude cut and just make sure it goes through the tube. Oops, forgot to make it a cut. Cut, there we go. Now notice something, see these little ears here? Sometimes that happens with tubing where it doesn't cut all the way because we're on this weird angle. So that's an easy fix. Go into the sketch and make this diameter a little bit bigger. It's, oh shoot. So even just 20 thousandths difference or something. And that'll take care of that. So if you think about in manufacturing, it's probably not going to be cut at exactly 750 anyway, so that's fine. Okay, so see how that notch is cut? That'll be mounted to the backbone tube, so you have to have it cut at that angle so that it matches together with that. And I'll just leave those planes on again because I need to use those when I go to constrain it. So now we'll continue to use our same nomenclature, and your numbers will be different, but something similar to that. So continue on. All right, this next part is the seat, I call it the seat frame. And remember, this is just, I'm designing it on the fly here, so I don't know about all these dimensions and so forth. I can edit them at any time. That's the beauty of parametrics. I do, at least I have something to go by though. I did make a sketch. I have a concept. I'm not just making it up right in the second, but I am sort of winging it. I just have linear dimensions here. I don't know what that angle is. It's just going to be whatever angle it turns out to be. Try that again. And don't forget to add your fillets on those corners. Again, 3-inch, 3-inch radius. Now this is kind of tight here. I got 2 3-inch radii. But see how I have more than 6 inches there, so I need to have enough room. If you can't fit the bend in, you'll have to change your dimensions. You can't make this too tight. You just can't physically bend those any tighter than that. So there's my path. I will want a plane on here. So I can create a sketch of my cross section. And then we'll sweep that. Okay, I'll turn off that work plane. Now the way this is going to fit together, I'm going to have to put a notch in this tube. Now I know I'm thinking ahead a lot. You can always come back and add the notches, but I'm just going to go ahead and do that right now. I know you're not going to know exactly what you need as you're building this, but you can always come back and add the notch. So I need a notch in this tube right here, because I have a similar situation. I'm going to have a horizontal tube that comes in here, so I need a notch on that end. I need a plane to work with, so let's do an offset plane from here, and I really just want to get it close to the tube. So that works. And I need another plane for this one. I'll just turn a couple of these off so they don't get in my way. And that should, let's see, that should work. So I can start a sketch on that plane right there. Again, 0.75. Finish the sketch. Let's do a cut. Now make sure I'm on cut. I'm going to cut it both directions and just make sure that number is big enough that you can get all the way through everything. Okay, so see how that notch is? Again, I'll have a horizontal tube that runs through there. I want to make sure I have accommodations for that. Same naming system as before. This next part's pretty simple. It's just the steering neck. Now, your dimensions are not going to be the same as mine. What I did was I looked at, I'm going to be purchasing a set of bearings to mount the fork in, and I need the proper dimensions that will let me fit those bearings in there. Now this is a straight piece, so I can just extrude it. I'm going to do a mid plane, and this is going to be kind of short. So that's basically what I would start with my piece of material, but I need to create place for the bearing race to go in here, so I'll need to create a pocket for that race to fit in, and in this case the manufacturer tells me it's a 1.73, so you have to check your bearings, your bearing race. Now that's going to be a cut, and it's going to be, in this case it's 5/8. Again, check your mating parts so that you get the right dimensions. And the bearing, you have a bearing race on each end. So the bearing race is what the bearing will ride on. That'll be press fit into this cylinder. That's going to be same dimension. So that's a simple part. The next part I'm going to make is for the backbone. Now I have kind of a unique design. It's got two tubes, which actually makes things a little more complicated, but it's probably a good demonstration for how to use this process. Now this is just it's a straight tube, so I can just extrude it. And my estimate is it's 15.5 inches long, but we'll see how that goes. So the challenge here is, let me show you what that backbone This is a subassembly of the backbone. So the steering neck will be mounted here. I've got 2 tubes for the backbone. This is where the seat is going to be. So see those 2 pieces of tubing I already made. Those, where I said I split this up into 2 pieces. So there's 2 of those and 2 of these, and there's a right and a left. But you see that notch? It's got a weird angled notch because that's where the steering neck is going to be mounted. So that makes it a little bit tricky. What I'm going to have to do here is, because I have 2 tubes, I have to work off of a center line in between these 2 tubes, determine what this angle is, and then cut that out. Once you do it, it's not so bad, but it is definitely a little bit tricky. So first thing I'm going to do here is I need to create another center line. So let's say this is the left side backbone. What I'm going to do is take this original plane here and I'm going to offset over 1/2 inch because there's 1 inch space center line to center line between these 2 tubes that make up the backbone. So bear with me. I know it's a lot of information. So I'm going to create a new plane. So don't do the double backbone thing. Trust me, it's a lot of work, but again, it's good for you to see how that works. So see what I did is I offset that one over. So let me just turn the visibility off for the second. So that's going to be, if this is the left backbone, that's going to be the center of where you put the 2 backbones. Jesus Christ. So I'm going to notch that. But I'll need the angle. So I'm going to need a plane here on an angle. So what I'm going to do is create a work plane, offset it from the end of this tube here, and I'm going to try 1/2 inch and see how that works, and just you'll see how this comes together. Because when I notch it, I don't want to take away too much material. So I need to create a work plane that's rotated. It's going to be that plane. I'm going to rotate it back whatever angle my neck is going to be. So in order to do that, I'll need an axis, because to create a rotated plane, you need an edge or an axis to rotate about. So if I click on these 2 planes, that'll create an axis at the intersection there. So that's what I'm going to work with. Let me just turn that off for the time being. So I'll go to plane, angled plane around an edge. So 2 inputs you have to give it. One is a plane, the other is the edge, which is going to be that axis I just created. And then I have to come up with an angle, which I think is going to be a 60. I'm going to start with a 60-degree angle, but that is the wrong 60. Let's try a minus 60. There we go. So my thought is that neck would be angled that way. If I don't like that angle, once I start to assemble it, I would just come in here and edit that plane so it's at a different angle. So it's not as difficult as it sounds. Turn that off. So that's what I have at this point. So again, bear with me, it's a lot happening right now. It'll all come together here in a second. So let's do a sketch then on that plane. I'm going to do a circle. Now remember I said my steering neck is 2 inches in diameter, and it's the center of that is going to be at that intersection right there, because that's the mid plane of my 2 steering necks, and that's going to be a 2 inch diameter, right? Remember, I'm going to pair this with another neck. Finish that and see what I have. I'm going to do a cut. I better do both directions, and let's see what that looks like. So see how that is cut out. If I go back to the sub-assembly, that's what I have, is that left piece. right? The mid plane of that cut is the or the center of that 2-inch circle is right between there. I scooted that plane out a 1/2 inch so it doesn't cut away too much material, and then I put that 60-degree angle. Okay, so again, I've made this a little more complicated than probably your design will be, and that is that piece. Now I have to also make a left side. It's going to be exactly the same, except I would offset that plane to the left instead of the right and do the same thing to create this pair. So now I've got, I think I have all my pieces built for the subassembly.